Good evening. Welcome to PoliticIt. We're in our new studio here. We got Bill Olson with us today. You're kind of the first guest in our new studio. It's great to have you, Bill.
Thanks, John. I must admit it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful.
We go way back.
We do.
Right? I still remember when you came to my house to talk me into running. Right?
Even before that, we were members in the same ward. You watched my children drool all over my business suits in church.
Yeah.
And I had to stop wearing them, okay? And so I just went and bought some old white shirts and started wearing them. Because by the time sacrament meeting was over, I was a wreck.
Yeah.
But no, it was. In fact, we were, I've always admired you, John, just in terms of your intellectual capacity as well as your career. And to get you involved with politics, I didn't know where you stood at the time, but I know that there were some influential folks that I was hanging with that were interested, and so I went along with them.
Yeah.
And we came over to see if we could persuade.
Well, was you, Linda Pipkin?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Brian Gray was with us, I think.
Brian was there. That's right. And we go way back in the party. So let's talk just a little bit about you, because you've been on before, but I just want people to know who you are. You're running to be the treasurer of the Republican Party, right?
Right. Weber County Party.
Yeah, the Weber County.
Right.
And so let's talk a little bit about you, where you went to school, where you grew up, what got you to where you are now.
Gotcha. Well, I grew up in the 70s. I played high school football, had a draft number of 14 for Vietnam after my first year of college football. And that confused the heck out of me. It was I wasn't very politically active at the time, although in college we were. But the Vietnam War kind of skewed a lot of our interpretation of government's ability to be successful, because many, many times we felt they weren't telling us the truth. And so that's kind of etched into my DNA, in terms of my history. And so I've always been an advocate for doing the right thing, and I'm a stickler for the rules. So anyway, after graduating from Loyola University in political science and philosophy, What
got you to Loyola? Why did you decide to go there?
Well, I grew up in
very good school.
I grew up in Rolling Hills Estates, California, raising horses, and Loyola was in Los Angeles. Okay.
Yeah.
And it was a very well-known, classic liberal arts education, like the old days.
Yeah.
It was run
by what I love.
Yeah. And that's why I think we connect a lot in that respect. But it was run by the Jesuits, which we referred to as the radical faction of the Catholic Church. I chose Loyola because it was probably the most challenging education in Los Angeles I could get. It was actually more expensive than USC at the time, and so it wasn't a money play. But I had a couple of friends that had attended and were attending, and so I went and checked it out. And very small school at the time, 2,200 students in my social science college of political science. My graduating class was 222, And so there were, for every 16 students on campus, there was a qualified PhD, and they taught the courses, So it wasn't a wham, bam, thank you, ma'am kind of education. It was, spend some time, read the books, and learn something. And I really learned how to learn at Loyola, and I haven't stopped learning my entire career. So once at Loyola, I graduated.
So is that where you learned to write? Because I know you're a good writer.
Yeah, well, I had very little confidence in my ability to write or my ability to understand real English. I really had to put the work in to do that. But I've always been a communicator. And in my youth, most of my communication was verbal, And so I would be the first guy to stand up or say something. And even in '76, for the bicentennial election, I was elected on campus as the president of the Political Science Association.
Oh.
And so we would conduct bonfires and voter registration efforts to register enough kids on campus to establish our own precinct. And we actually did.
So who was your kind of political mentor? Not really mentor, but who were the politicians you really liked at that time?
The first one that really got my attention, that I really felt heartwarming to, was really Ronald Reagan. And the reason it happened, John, is because I voted and worked for Jimmy Carter's campaign, okay? We wore shirts, I worked for peanuts, right?
Yeah.
And all that voter registration we were doing on campus was for Democrats. We were trying to get these kids to register as Democrats. But when I graduated in '78 and Reagan was elected president, I had started a business out of college. And I was staring down the barrel of 16% inflation, 18% interest rates, and I couldn't afford to buy a house till I was in my early 30s. And so I watched when Reagan was elected in 1980. I remember because I grew up in a fairly affluent area, and a lot of my friends' parents were seeking tax shelters outside the United States because tax rates were up to 90%.
Right.
And Reagan kind of said, show me where the money is and I'll change the rates. And when he changed those rates, it spawned what I believe was probably 15 years of a growing economy that helped me start a business and launch it and grow and learn how to pay taxes and do, you know, a lot of things that I didn't see in my future coming out of college because of the huge inflation rates and the weird political situation that was going on. But the hard part during it all was I did play 1 year of college football, and then my draft number 14 had me scheduled for the draft. I wasn't going to run away. Grew up in an affluent area in Rolling Hills Estates. Many parents sent their kids to Canada, okay, to keep them out of the draft. And I just said, I'm going to go. And I was in process. I had my induction physical. And Nixon called off the draft 6 months early. The conscription laws expired in June of '73.
You just missed it.
Yeah, I was in process. I had my pre-induction and induction physical. And when he made this announcement in February of '73 early, I was told you can continue processing and be in the U.S. Army, but you're not compelled to do so anymore. You can be a volunteer. And I said, I'm going home. Sorry.
Oh, wow.
And my father was 1st Marine Division, 1st Engineers in Chosin Reservoir, okay, in Korea. 50% casualties with the 1st Marine Division. My brother and I just finished writing a book about it, actually. We had been collecting a lot of his stuff. And so I even look at the situation now in the way in which we conduct wars. And it doesn't seem fair to young people. And so, so once I got out of college, I experienced business. And I experienced paying taxes. And I experienced a lot of things I just read about. And that started shaping me a little bit more conservatively in terms of how I would see politics or how I would see the world. I grew up LDS, and I'm not the most loyal person in the world, but I can tell you, I still attend church today. Raised my daughters. I baptized both my daughters, 7th generation, into the church. But I can tell you, just to be perfectly honest, in which I like to be. I don't need a man-made religion to practice my covenant with God. My covenant with God is personal. He knows me in my heart. I know I can't trick him. Okay, so I am motivated by doing the right thing a lot of ways. Sometimes my tactics may be challenged, but I don't think the reasoning or the principles that I'm trying to protect can be. And so again, I have to just talk about my experience in business, where I ran companies and I hired people and I built executive teams. And if they didn't perform, I fired them, John.
Right.
You can't do that in an organization of volunteers. And so it gets to be very frustrating sometimes when you can write a plan and you can build a team and you can direct the team, and then the plan doesn't come to fruition. And then you start realizing why. And then pretty soon you start picking apart, real specific things. And perceptions could be, this guy won't leave the small stuff alone. But in the bigger picture, John, I really would like to see our party succeed. And I think we can. And my involvement in the party in the last 23 years, I've been everything.
Right.
I've even run for party chair and vice chair. I didn't win those 2 elections, but I've won every other election in every party position. And even on the SCC level, I lived through a rogue chair back then. I learned parliamentary procedure just to protect our ability to debate. And so about 2017, when we started losing some of the SB 54 stuff, I took it upon myself to start a little group called Weber County Conservatives. And I did it to start developing educational opportunities for volunteers, for people. The first state convention I went to, I think in 2012, I walked in the door with 4,000 delegates, and I didn't know what to do. And I felt hopeless. And here I thought, all this preparation and understanding and elections to get there didn't prepare me for what my role was. And so my passion over the last 10 years really has been, how can I motivate people to do the right thing? How can I motivate them to read the information they need to be effective at what they do? As a writer, John, nobody reads anymore.
Yeah.
I've been unable to successfully condense my writing to 164 characters. Yeah. I just can't get across what I'm trying to. But anyway, so I don't feel that I am a divisive person. I feel that I ask the hard questions sometimes, and I want to know. Okay, if a constitutional requirement is to do A and we do B, I want to know why, and I want to try to figure out how can we do it the right way next time. And so it might seem trivial, I guess, to some people, but really, and again, I'm not looking for perfection. Look, I understand we're all imperfect. Yeah. And I knew that better than anybody. Try to build companies with a bunch of imperfect executives, okay? Yeah. It's not easy. It's the same challenge, I think, with a party, But in business, what business has taught me, and I've started 5 companies in my career, all diverse, different types of companies, all with the idea that I needed to figure out how I was supposed to do this. And I would do my research, and I would read my stuff, and I would write my plans, and then convince people to invest money in it. Yeah. And that's the only way you can really get it done. And so to live in a fiduciary environment where my duty is to tell the truth all the time, I have a very hard time in groups or organizations where the truth isn't really dealt with, as it should be. And so
let's take a break and we'll come back to that thought. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Tired of media bias? Frustrated by political noise? PoliticIt.com cuts through the clutter, giving you real facts, clear analysis, and unbiased insight on the issues that matter most. Stay informed, stay empowered. Whether it's elections, policy changes, or breaking news, we've got you covered. No spin, no agendas, just truth you can trust. Visit PoliticIt.com today, because informed citizens shape the future. PoliticIt.com, where politics meets clarity.
Welcome back to PoliticIt. We've got Bill Olson with us today, and Bill's the candidate for the treasurer of the Weber County GOP.
Yes, sir.
So during the break, we talked just a little bit about your role in the party, and let's talk a little bit about that, because since you're running to be part of the leadership team, right, let's talk about what your perception of what's the role of the party.
Yeah. Well, I think the role of the party is to elect good quality candidates. And I think, John, the reason we have a platform is because the less involved registered Republican, if a candidate agrees to the platform, that less informed voter can probably predict their voting behavior if it's related to tenets in the platform. And so when voting behavior changes or moves away from that platform, it starts to really confuse, I think, the less informed voter. And so then they start to attack the party. They start to say, well, if they're not going to do it, if they're not going to pay attention to this tenet of the platform, does that mean they're going to ignore this other tenet of the platform? So I don't know.
But don't you find sometimes, though, that we get so involved that I'm just thinking about what's been going on, right?
Right.
The flag, that was a big issue.
Yeah.
Okay, but I don't know where in the platform the flag is.
Well, I agree.
Right? But that seemed to be a litmus test for candidates, depending on how they voted on it.
For a faction of the group. And I can tell you, I may have mentioned it before, but one of the hardest things to deal with, I believe, as a conservative in Utah, is one-issue conservative voters who take their conservatism and they throw it behind one issue. And if that doesn't work, then it blows up the whole thing.
See, and I don't have any problem with people that are like that.
Yeah.
But should that be the party leadership, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you're really trying to elect Republican candidates, right? and supposedly help to support them.
Yeah. Well, as a CEO running an executive team, I would hire them, and I bought them each a book. I believe the title was "Who is Hiding My Cheese" or whatever.
Yeah.
The whole concept that change is inevitable, okay, and that you have to build an executive team or an organization to manage change, and I think the best way to manage change is to follow your rules. And if changing behavior requires a rule change, that effort alone brings people together, okay?
Of actually working on a rules committee and actually changing the way
Absolutely, debating and arguing. And at the end of the day, it's not about winning. It's about getting to what is a majority opportunity for you to move the process forward. And we're never going to get 100% agreement in that kind of thing. But I do think that there are members of the Republican Party, let's say especially over the last 4 years of the Biden administration, who feel somewhat less represented, okay, in terms of really pushing the platform. I primarily, I kind of live by the platform, but because for me it's easy. I agree with the tenets of the platform. I agree with smaller government. I agree with the things that Republicans stand for. But I do think disagreement isn't a bad thing. And I think if we learn to disagree and debate and get to a collective decision, everybody wins.
Well, let me ask you about something. Yeah. And I like to go along with what people in the party want to do, right? I'm a big supporter of the caucus system. I think it's really important. I like the idea that we're a republic, right? And that.
Right.
But when I start thinking about the role of the party and the party leadership and what they're supposed to be doing, I was just a little put off when I got this resolution that came from the Weber County Party that said if we don't vote a certain way on the Secretary of State, that we should be challenged in primary. And that just hit me wrong, because I thought, is that really the role of the party?
No, it smells more like a bit of desperation, okay? You can be behind an issue so strongly that sometimes you forget, right, how to behave. But no, it's not the role of the party. I think the role of the party is to understand that it is a constitutionally protected private organization and it can make its own rules. Okay, end of story. And there's constitutional case law that supports that. And I think we don't have that going on in our party today. I think we've drifted in certain directions, that we've ignored certain rules. I could go deep into examples, but we don't have the time.
And that's what really motivated you to put together the conservatives, the Weber County Conservatives.
It was, right? Because I started what we call Patriot Training. And so that we provide training for every volunteer elected position in the Republican Party, including leadership positions, if they want. And it's simply by taking the curriculum, building the curriculum around our governing documents, and then adding reasonableness and common sense to the application of those.
Do you think that, one of the things that bothers me right now is the party seems to develop these factions, right? And I don't know how, I liked what you said about the platform, and we center around the platform, right? Because that helps us to understand who we are as an organization.
Absolutely.
Right?
It helps us predict the behavior of the officials we're giving our votes to. That's a very sacred exercise, giving your vote to somebody and trusting them. But I could give examples where behavior of certain members of the party or leadership positions of the party create some of these problems because procedurally they're not done correctly, or there's not the respect that's due in a deliberative assembly. All things need to be discussed, okay? And if you don't want to let somebody discuss them, that's really not who we are. We've got to be able to have the patience to be able to listen to each other and then arrive at a consensus. If we do that, John, and you lose the debate, at least you have the satisfaction to know that you had a chance to represent a minority opinion. And if your opinion doesn't succeed, don't go break a window or kick a dog. Find a better argument. Find like-minded people who can support what it is you're looking to do. And you don't do it with threats. You don't do it with threats like, hey, if you don't do this, we're going to do that. That's not how you get things done, right? That just expands the divisiveness, in my opinion.
Well, I've seen that a lot. I think Twitter has kind of contributed to this, right? X, right?
Oh, social media.
Yeah. So you get fried on social media, right? You have to be careful what you say because people will take it out of context, and they'll, I mean, they throw around the word rhino a lot, right? People in the Senate were kind of laughing at me because they got a kick out of someone calling me rhino down there because, I don't know. I don't know what the perception.
John. Sorry.
And so it's weird though. But why? It seems like to me we have people in the party that want to go after the ones they're actually in more agreement with than the ones that are completely off the.
I would argue, John, that anybody in this party that thinks I want to be divisive doesn't know me. Well, they haven't worked with me. They haven't talked with me. They haven't debated me. Okay? Their position is on divisiveness, and if that's their position, that's what they present. It's the same kind of thing with an elected official. People can start building stories and momentum about what they can or can't do or what they should do. That's really not how it works. And I think I've mentioned before, John, in my opinion, as an elected official, once you are elected as a Republican, your constituency changes. If you're a good representative, you have to moderate somewhat because you have to deal with independents and Democrats and Republicans in your district.
Well, and that's the thing people don't understand too, is that, I know certain members of the Senate that are in very purple districts that actually have taken strong conservative positions on some things.
Right.
But then they moderate on other things to keep their constituents happy.
Same thing happens in the party.
Yeah.
If you look at some of the different counties that are, have a greater mix of conservatives and liberals, they tend to find solutions or look for solutions within the party by changing the Constitution rather than addressing bylaws within their geography. And so it's like anything else. You want to solve the problem, but you can't create problems for 28 other counties by solving a problem you have in one county.
Right.
And so that kind of stuff, there has to be a lot more, I think, communication. And there's more of that going on now between counties, a lot more. And I've witnessed it primarily through more conservative groups that have been setting up in those counties and have been pushing to promote the party platform and those kind of things. But the same thing happens at the party level as you're experiencing at the legislative level. And how do we deal with it? Well, it's the nature of the game, and we just have to be able to communicate, I think. And that's why, to me, rules are so important, because we have rules for a reason, okay? And the rules allow us to conduct our business and to disagree and to find common ground in order to move the process forward. And that's really what I'm motivated to do.
Well, so we're about out of time.
Yeah.
So why don't you just make a final pitch?
Okay.
Why should people vote for you?
Okay, I'm interested in being a treasurer of the Weber County Republican Party because I think we can do better fundraising. As an entrepreneur building companies and convincing shareholders to invest in my company, I have to convince them that I can deliver value. Well, I think fundraising in inter-county is directly related to the value, or at least the perception of the value of the party. So let's work on that, okay? As an example, there's no reason in the world why the party shouldn't be involved in merchandising, okay? For example, every candidate should buy all their yard signs from the party. The party can negotiate a better deal. The party can take a sneeze off of each transaction and give it back to the candidates during the election. But the party then is perceived as much more functional and much more important in the process. Okay, and the same can be said with building a relationship with donors that give them prestige and an opportunity to put more money into the party and get more prestige and credit for what they're doing. But the party has to deliver their part of the deal, which is we're going to be the Republican Party, and we talk conservatism every election cycle, but we're going to be a conservative party, and we're going to work together, not like the Republicans in Congress, but maybe by the Republicans in Utah. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to get better. And so as the treasurer position, number one, I think we can do better fundraising. Number two, it puts me on the executive committee and I can kind of be back into the dialogue of what's going on with the party. I've been off the executive committee now about 4 years. And when I make appearances at conventions or I do training, things are happening I am aware of, but I'm not a part of. And so I'm interested in being part of the solution, John, and not to be part of a problem or a new problem. I really think with the turnaround the Republican National Committee has done, and the most recent election, and the Republicans were getting elected, I think is a great educational opportunity for the state party to say, hey, wait a minute. Let's tighten our belt a little bit and let's start focusing on conservative Republicans. We all talk about it. Let's be it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, John.
Bill Olson, nice to have you. We'll see you guys next week.